Reels for no. This is a great clip for the girls. Will love it. Gentlemen, we got to talk about the difference between awareness and focus. They're strange words. So I want your focus to be on this black spot. What does that mean?
That's what your eyes are looking at.
Yeah, it means that it is in sharp focus. You can see like the outline of the tape. Like this is clear in terms of focal depth. And also in terms of focus, I want you to stare at this black spot with hatred in your heart. Like you have a strong desire to put the bullets here. Like if you like stare at it, it's like that's where I want the bullets to go. That is gonna make that makes bullets go where you want. However, you need to be aware of your sight position. I think everybody's shooting a dot, right? Yeah, so we need to focus here but be aware of the red dot. What the hell does that mean? Well,
don't watch the red dot.
Yeah, well, I've got a great example. Hopefully there's some married dudes here. We're in Texas, so we're gonna usually I talk about Scottsdale women for this example, but I think like the Real Housewives of Dallas would be better, right? You know what I'm talking about. All right, so let's say you're in a booth in a restaurant. You're sitting across from your wife. There's one of these Dallas, Real Housewives of Dallas, the long hair, the big fake hoodies, all the upgrades. She's in the background over there. Are you aware she's there? You are aware. I know you're aware. What happens if you focus on that? If you're like talking to your wife, you're like, do that, bad things will happen to you. This is the same as shooting your red dot, okay? You stare at this. This is where I want the bullets to go. And this red thing is going to be dancing, doing this. If I start staring at this thing, the bullets go up into that cone. They go into that cone, and a lot of you are seeing this, where the shots track up and away. That's what causes that. It's like you're not returning the gun to where you're looking because your actual focus goes onto the red dot, okay? But that, like the example I gave, is not even really accurate, right? The Dallas chick isn't in the background. Imagine she's pole dancing on the table in between you and your wife. I'm serious. That's what it is. It's like I'm looking at that black spot, and it's like this dot is in the way. It's like, no, I'm aware. Obviously, I'm aware of what the pole dancing Dallas chick is doing, but I need to be focused here. And that's kind of the battle you're fighting. Now, I think shooters divide up pretty cleanly into two groups. There's people that understand that as they're shooting probably very often, or at least occasionally, their focus goes onto the sight. Okay? Then there are people that are like, nah, bro, it's a red dot. I'm target focused. And they are completely delusional. That is not what's happening. It's true. Everybody's going to flip their focus onto the sight. Now, what you want to do is become aware of when that happens. So there's a couple things to pay attention to visually here. First, if you're staring at your sight, the target's going to be blurry brown thing. It'll blur out, and you will perceive your shooting as better, but it will be worse. What I mean is, if I'm actually focused on the sight, this red dot covers up blurry brown thing, you'll be like, yeah, it's good. Boom, and you'll send it. You'll be like, yep, I see red on brown. Good, send it. And typically the hits just kind of blow out, and if you're shooting really aggressively, again, they'll track up high. But you'll call your shots as good. It'll look good to you because you see red on brown. It looks okay. For those of you that have the hits slipping up high, if you really think about it, like, did you call those? Did you perceive that when it happened? Probably not, and that reinforces the case that you're staring at the red dot. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So that's one thing to pay attention to. Another thing, as we have this black aiming reference here, this makes it much, much easier to tell like what your dot's doing relative to that. If you perceive, you're like, whoa, the dot like shifted way left, like that looks like a miss. And then you walk down here and it's just in the C zone, that means you're actually target focused. People, if you're really focused on a small spot like this, people tend to overread what the sight tells them. Like, it'll look horrible to them. They'll like see the sight flick over there, like, my God, that's gotta be a miss. And you'll look at the target and it's not. How many of you have experienced this? This is very normal with red dots. It's almost like telling you too much. You're like, what? You're like, man, that looked horrible. But that, again, that is what it should look like, because if you're truly target focused on a small spot and you see your sight flick over, it will look bad to you. It just won't be as bad as you perceive it initially, and then with training you kind of understand where the bullets are actually going. Okay? Other things we can do. Occluding, covering the front of the sight. What does this do for us?
Forces you to be targeted.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't force shit.
Alright.
It's a good I'm glad you said though. People believe this. If we occlude the front of the sight, it will not force me. What it does, it should indicate to you when you are focused on the sight, because it makes it more difficult to see the target because we're covering over the optic. But people occlude the dot and think it forces them to do shit. It does not force anything. You can still shoot sight focused with an occluded optic. Ask me how I know. You can do it. It's a thing that can happen. It's like, so we don't want to do that. The other thing we want to pay attention to is the brightness of the sight and make sure that you're playing around with that. In my opinion, when you look out at the targets and you look at the world, your red dot should just be a red thing that just exists out here. It shouldn't be bright and popping out and pulling your eye to it. Also, it should not be dim and hard to see, because then you'll be like, where is that shit? Right? It should just be a red thing that exists. However, for training, making the dot over bright, over dim, putting it right where you want, like adjusting the brightness as we're working through this is going to help you figure out what you're even seeing and what you're looking at. Does that make sense? And then typically when you're really shooting, the dot's going to be typically too bright for the lighting conditions. Why is that? Come on. So just think, like, if you're in you're shooting a stage, or you're like shooting in some environment, if the dot's too dim, you can't see it, you're effed. So like, let's say I'm shooting over here, then I go inside of like a structure and it's shaded, now my dot's too bright. And that's the way it's gonna be normally. It's like, it'll either be right or it'll be too bright. So you have to get used to shooting it too bright as well. That makes sense? Okay. So we're gonna back up and we'll repeat this just with the aiming references. Sound good? Cool. Let's do it.